my granddad's sister. She had some sort of cancer, but the doctors misdiagnosed her. So that's when I realized that, with all the machine learning, artificial intelligence, etc., we can do like so much more in healthcare.
Ethical considerations of AI, data science, and ML.
We have one on the project that I'm working right now because it's more like
For a young professional who is looking to now pivot his or her career to data science, what are 3 exact skills he or she needs to be able to build a career in data science?
Transforming the world of data. Women leaders in tech.
Changing how we train data models. Smriti Mishra, ladies and gentlemen.
So welcome Smriti to the Shatakshi Show. And at the outset, congratulations on being a TGI 30 under 30. I am really honored to have young professionals like you who are making a mark in STEM, in technology, and especially women who are making a mark in technology and in data science. Over to you. Would absolutely love to hear about your brief introduction for our audience before we start. And most importantly, I would like to start from the start. Where did you grow up? What was childhood for you like? What kind of chats and topics were you discussing with your family and parents? So over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's really been an honor to be one of the awardees, and I'm looking forward to this chat today. So I never really thought of what I wanted to do. It was mostly like, surviving day to day and just trying to figure out what would be best for me in a certain situation. And that's sort of the person I've always been. I think I had a pretty normal childhood. I was into drawing and dancing. I grew up in Jamshedpur in India. Yeah, nothing really special, I would say.
No, I think having a stable household in itself is, of course, a privilege. I have worked in international affairs and my mind was blown when I was working, especially in Middle East. And every day I realized how privileged a stable household and a stable economy and politics can matter in the advancement of all of our careers. You are a rising star in tech. And for our audience, I may, of course, tell them that you have been an awardee at many levels in the Nordic region for being a young tech leader. And of course, you have been mentoring at Google as well. With that, I would want to perhaps understand your journey with data science. And I was thinking that a lot of our questions could revolve around data science, largely because a lot of young professionals are now interested about this arena, but they don't know about it. So I thought that it would be really very helpful. Apart from, of course, inspiring them, we could better aware them about the opportunities in the market. So what is data science? That is my number one question if you were to explain to a young professional. And then we will also understand how did data science happen to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there can be, some confusion when it comes to data science, artificial intelligence, and all of those terms. The best way to put it is that right now we have a lot of data that's being generated around, and the quantity of data has been increasing exponentially and probably still will. A data scientist is someone who, takes that data and makes useful insights out of them. We basically work with a lot of complex problems, a lot of complex data, and help the business or a certain company achieve their goals. So it's mostly that, a lot of problem solving and trying to fit the pieces of the puzzle together.
Got it. Beautifully articulated. And how did data science happen to you? Did you apply right away after college that this is what you want to do, or did you have experience before that? What was the journey like? Did you face any rejections? If you could share that with the audience too.
I actually applied during my undergrad. So I was studying electronics and communication in my undergrad in Bangalore at PES University. And I think probably a couple of weeks in, I realized that I absolutely hated electronics and communications. Like, hated. There was nothing I liked about it for the first 2 years. Then during the third year, we were introduced to signal processing. So signal processing was a lot like mathematics and stuff, right? And maths is something that I liked a lot more than electronics. So that's when I thought that I would probably want to explore more of the signal processing domain. And during my university years, we had an option to take electives, and we could take it in. We had 3 sort of specialization domains: signal processing, embedded systems, I think, and communications. So that's when I decided to pursue my specialization, where we take 6 courses or 8 courses, something, 2 every semester. If you do more than a certain number of courses, you get a specialization. So that's when I started taking courses like machine learning, pattern recognition, etc. I realized that I like them more because I am a lazy person. Or at least I used to be a very lazy person, and I absolutely hated writing, like, taking my pen and writing. So if it's like more of math, it's easy to write because it's numbers. Also, it was much easier for me to understand because it's like logic, and you can sort of do these mnemonics in your head, which makes it much easier to understand. So that's honestly why I took it. But also at the same time, my granddad's sister, she had some sort of cancer, but the doctors misdiagnosed her, and they basically slit the tumor, which eventually led the cancerous cells to basically spread everywhere instead of it being contained. So I spent a bit of time with the doctors and tried to understand why it's happening and everything. And the doctors basically said that if they had diagnosed it at the right time with the right tools and stuff, it would have been much easier. And we lost her in a couple of months after that. So that's when I realized that, with all the machine learning, artificial intelligence, etc., we can do like so much more in healthcare. And if not just healthcare, a lot of these domains which can actually contribute to making our lives easier, which I think what technology should do. A couple of months after that, I got to go to Germany to present a paper that I had been working on. And I did a solo trip across Europe for 40 days. That's when I realized that I could probably apply for a bachelor thesis somewhere. And I really wanted to visit Sweden because I was obsessed with Northern Lights and Nobel Prize. That's how I sent a lot of emails to professors from different universities, like mostly in Sweden, KTH, Kungliga Tekniska Högskolan, the King's Technical High School. They have like insane bachelor's and master's program, and they're like really good, especially in AI and robotics and stuff. So that's how I got my bachelor thesis here at KTH in computational neuroscience, where I was basically working on how we could use recurrent neural networks, deep learning, to visualize and understand how people lose memory in diseases like amnesia and dementia. And I did that project for my bachelor thesis for 3 months. And then after I finished my bachelor's, I went back to India, finished the one course I couldn't take last semester because I was in Sweden. And then I came back here to continue on the project 10 more months. So I worked on that project for 14 months, and it was really interesting. But yeah, during this time, I had emailed a lot of people who did not really get back. So I think that happens. That's normal.
This is such an interesting journey. I have so many follow-up questions as you were narrating your journey about solo traveling Europe in your early 20s, about that amnesia study that you're talking about. So let's go one by one. But my first and foremost question would be certainly about that amnesia study you're talking about. I'm someone who is extremely passionate about mental health. And at some point of time, if I start my third venture, maybe it could be about mental well-being and health as well. Could you share some insights into what did you find out after your study? Why do people lose their memory, etc.?
I think it's going to be very technical, but basically in a human brain, we have different parts which do different things, right? So we have something basically has this fight or flight response, amygdala, hippocampus and stuff. My study was mostly based on the hippocampus area of the brain, which is also like the largest area in a human brain. What we did was we visualized like the areas of hippocampus as neurons, and then further taking it down to a more granular level of hypocolumns. So hypocolumn is basically like a cylindrical structure where you have a certain number of particles, and We can either also divide it to a more granular level of mini columns, which we did not go to because it was more of an abstract research. And also, I was there for 3 months at first, so it was pretty difficult. So what we did was we did all these analysis of how, the connections that are formed inside the human brain, what kind of connections they are to begin with, and how do these neurons interact with each other when there's some sort of noise present, without any noise, also how it reacts if the patterns formed are more orthogonal, non-orthogonal. So it was pretty technical and also like very research oriented, but we did see the results of how it changes or how it varies. And it's basically something, to explain in the simplest terms, like a short circuit that happens. It's a very similar reaction within the spikes that are formed in the brain when the connections occur. And these are those short circuit kind of things that lead to some people losing memories for a certain duration of time.
This is certainly very helpful. I'm just so impressed you still remember a lot of details, even though you must have done this way back. And with that, I would want to move and talk about the comparisons. I remember early in your answer, you mentioned that people have a confusion between machine learning, data science. There is an entire revolution in AI also happening. Could you compare what are the difference between, let's say, add a fourth element, let's say software engineering roles as well? So you have data science, you have AI, you have machine learning, and you have software development roles. What would be the fundamental nature in which these four roles differ with each other?
Let's say we have, like, imagine a Venn diagram. So we have this one circle, which is AI. We have this, which is machine learning. So machine learning is basically a subset of AI. And when it comes to data science, there are some overlaps, but there's still, some differences, because basically when it comes to artificial intelligence, we have a couple of other things which can be which are a subset of artificial intelligence along with machine learning, which is deep learning, which is more brain inspired. So machine learning is basically a lot like statistics, honestly. But there's not really an intelligence, it's learning that's happening based on the inputs that are provided, based on what you already know. But in artificial intelligence, there's this learning, because it's very brain inspired. And when we talk about entire artificial intelligence and everything that falls within that umbrella, it's brain inspired, and it tries to mimic how we think, how we do things. So that's that. And then data science is something we already discussed, which is mostly using this data and trying to make insights out of it. Now, when we try to make insights out of this, we probably would need some tools or some methods to do it, which is where machine learning or other type of artificial intelligence techniques come into picture. So that's where overlap is happening.
You mentioned that AI is mimicking the brain. So how does a computer really mimic a brain without learning from the data? So machine is learning from the past and is predicting the future using that data, right? And then there is AI, which you are saying is mimicking a brain to think, critically examine, etc. How does a machine produce AI driven answers? Does it also not learn from the historical information, or is there any other way through which the machine learns?
It's basically like how maybe I am in a new city and I don't know the paths yet. So I use Google Maps to go to wherever I want, and then I go there 4 days, and then I probably know the directions better. And the 5th day, I don't need Google Maps. That's exactly how our brain works too, right? It basically works on the data that we have acquired with whatever we've lived and whatever experiences we've gained. So someone with more experiences, or at least should be someone who has the most right answers, because they have all the data stored in their head. So that's exactly how AI also works. So it's trained on like a lot of data, and but the difference is that when it comes to artificial intelligence, if there's a question that's not posed before, it will better answer that question as opposed to a machine learning model.
Got it. With that, I would want to pick your brains on the skills for a young professional who is looking to now pivot his or her career to data science. What are 3 exact skills he or she needs to be able to build a career in data science?
I would say the first thing probably is the fundamental knowledge or the theoretical knowledge that one needs to have. You need to very clearly understand what are the different types of learnings, what do they lead to, when do you apply what is something very important. I've seen people apply convolutional neural networks for a use case that probably can be solved with linear regression. So I think it's important to have a good fundamental knowledge of the techniques and stuff, also some statistics, and definitely at least one programming language, Python or R, when it comes to data science. I personally like to work more in Python because that's what I have been working on, and also because it helps you span a little more outside data science if you want. Like if you want to do more of data engineering and stuff, then that kind of covers it really well also.
Got it. You mentioned learning a coding language such as Python and R. In fact, at our alternative to IIT Education Institute, there is a big focus on making sure that your fundamentals on coding, especially Python, is there. I want to understand your learning with coding journey. How did you learn Python? Was it a self-learning model? Was it instructor-led model? How did you learn coding end to end?
When I was doing my undergraduation, we did have a basic introduction to Python course, which was not that useful. But I had like a very basic hint of what coding is, but not that in depth. I used to be scared of coding, honestly, earlier, but I was more comfortable with it when I started doing it myself. And I think there are some really nice, boot camps out there, some really nice places which provide coding lessons, but you still need to practice it yourself. So I actually spent a lot of time learning programming when I was doing my bachelor thesis, and I was also learning a bit of biology because of hippocampus and amygdala and all of that. So I would just try to do like a very small project like on Kaggle or something, which takes a couple of hours, and just try to put it on my GitHub, try to see how it works, participate in all of these competitions which rank your model. And yeah, so it was mostly that. It was mostly self-taught, some things on Coursera and a bit of university, but I don't really want to give credit to that.
Got it. I like your answer. It's almost like 80-20, which is 80% practice, putting projects on GitHub, getting feedback, and 20% learning from online boot camps or other alternatives. In fact, that's the culture, by the way, we have either at GJ, which is our business school. I always say that for you to be able to crack case interviews, we can teach you 1 or 2. You yourself will have to learn and practice 60 case interviews. And similarly with coding, we can do a boot camp, but if you do not do the projects, and I think generally that's for every skill in life also, if you do not put in your hours, then I don't think any instructor-led model will be able to do magic for you. I want to pick your brains on something as a founder of 2 education institutes, which is disrupting the traditional education model. I asked this question to all my guests on the Shatakshi Show. What are your views on the value or the lack of value of education and degrees? I think you especially sit in a very unique situation because you have had education in India, you have had some bit of education abroad as well. So what value did that degree give to you in your career in data science, and what were certain elements that were missing?
So I did as I said, I did my bachelor's in electronics and communications, which I absolutely hate. And then I had a chance to do my master's in Sweden. Like I had an admission, and I also had a scholarship for that. Not really a scholarship, but more like a fee waiver. But yeah, so I didn't have to pay for it. But then I got a nice job. Yeah, I mean, I didn't see much of a difference in my case, but it can be very different in different people's cases. I think when it comes to coding, at least it's one of those, or programming, it's one of those things where your experience or what you can do matters a bit more than a degree. then there are these things which like business law, where it makes sense to have a, like a fancy degree, and because it's a lot difficult to judge, I think, during the interviews what a person is capable of, and the atmosphere that they survive in after graduating also, it's very hectic. It pays a lot, but it's very hectic. So I think in those cases, it probably makes more sense. And definitely, it's really good to have a higher education in data science as well. But again, it's not the end of the world if you don't.
Correct. If I understand your answer, you are, at least in your experience, you believe that you had limited value out of it. And I completely concur, by the way, with the view that don't spend a bomb. Especially today, Harvard Business School is costing 2 CR. In coming years, it will be upwards of 3 CR and whatnot. If you have 2 competing offers, you get full scholarship. And even if it is not HBS, take that. I'm sure it will be something comparative to HBS. So I actually concur with your views. And I want to pick your brain on something, because one is signaling when it comes to degree, and second is skill, right? So for example, can someone get into Google with the skills that he or she has the best skills, let's say compared to an MIT student, right? But may not have a fancy degree. Does he or she have a chance in data science in Google, or does the degree signaling matters?
I think there are two things. If it's like a more entry level position, then probably they have a good chance. But even if they don't, the thing is that it's always difficult to get a first job. But once you get some experience, then there's always a much wider scope or much wider sense of opportunities to go to. That's what I've realized. At that time, I think I saw a little more roles which needed higher education in computer science, which also I didn't really qualify for. Eventually, I realized, or maybe it's because I had some experience, or it could just be because people understand after pandemic a little more that there were a lot of people who didn't really study but spent a lot of time inside their house learning, or spending a lot of time honing their skills, which are actually very useful. So I see it becoming a little less relevant. And I know a couple of people who are really awesome, getting paid a lot, are very good at what they do, and they don't really have a higher education degree. But then there are also these people who wanted to study, who studied, and at the same place or a better place. So I think it's a very individualistic, very subjective thing. In my case, I don't really like studying or paying for education, and I thought it would be nice if I, do a job and, travel a bit with the money I earn.
I loved your answer, because you do realize that it's an individualistic answer. And there are famous entrepreneurs in India who also say that perhaps they dropped out of school and they were able to find the answer without a degree. But that answer may not work for others. So everyone knows how do they learn. For example, I always believe that the value of a college is actually not in the skills, it's in the community, especially in colleges such as MIT, the kind of people that you rub your shoulders with and the kind of community that you form. Very interestingly, that's another kind of diverse community you can form on your travels as well. With that, I would want to talk about ethical considerations of AI, data science, and ML, especially in your case. Were there any projects where you had ethical conundrums, especially from privacy point of view? And if yes, could you shed some light on them?
We have one on the project that I'm working right now, because it's more like a database generation which follows a lot of GDPR rules. I don't think I can share too much about this project, but it's important to understand the regulations. GDPR is like a huge thing, and violating GDPR can be not that pleasant. So it's important we understand if someone has a protected identity, we anonymize their identity. We don't really show it on the database. So we're working on that.
Got it. With that, I think I'll move towards the last curiosity, Smriti, that I have from you is about emerging trends in the field of AI and ML, especially with the advent of ChatGPT. All hell has broken loose. What would be your view or certain facts that you know as an insider of the industry about certain newer trends in the market?
I think a couple of things. Probably the first, or I think that's that should be the most important according to me, and a lot of companies are starting to take notice about it now. It's more of sustainable AI, sustainable tech domain. So basically, when it comes to us coding also, there can be a lot of practices which we can adapt. Just some minor changes in our practices which can lead to our carbon emissions while coding, while training a data science model, while working on a data engineering pipeline, reduce the amount of carbon emission a lot. The amount of carbon that's emitted while these models run, that itself is like a huge chunk which needs to be reduced. And until we do it, we can't really call ourselves carbon neutral or carbon positive, because that's something that we neglect, right? So it needs to be offsetted somewhere. The other thing that I have been really interested in right now is more of the extended reality domain. And like right now with the Vision Pro and stuff, it's also gaining a lot of popularity. I have a friend who works for a company in Sweden, in the south of Sweden, and they work on actually extending reality, like with wearables or with phones, with like a lot of different things. A great combination of augmented and virtual reality, which helps make the user experience much better, which I think it's going to be huge in the coming years.
Got it. Beautiful answers, Smriti, especially the first one around climate impact. Carbon footprint that is generated because of manufacturing those EV vehicles has to be considered into the entire calculation with respect to what is being emitted when the vehicle is on the road. So thank you so much for such interesting answers, showcasing your intellectual self on a lot of interesting questions around the skills, around coding, around your life in Sweden, and being a very empowering and an inspiring women of tech in Nordic. And that's almost the end of the Shatakshi Show. Would absolutely love if you might have any parting words for young professionals who would love to build a career like you in future.
Absolutely. I think I would say that, as you very rightfully mentioned, that the importance of having a community, building a community. So I would say that it's really, really important to network. I found LinkedIn very helpful when it comes to that, and maybe someone else can possibly, create some opportunities there as well. Also, I think something that, I don't think I'm like the smartest person out there or anything, but I think there are two things which I like to follow. One is that if there are no opportunities, you can always go ahead and try to create one. Like if you see that someone's doing the work that you are interested in learning, why not just leave them a message and see if they might be interested in having an intern, or just going out and meeting for a coffee. Or in Sweden there's this concept which is very popular called fika, where you take a coffee and you take something sweet with it, and you take your time and you have like a nice chat with someone you are with. And so why not go out for like a coffee chat or a fika or a lunch, dinner, anything. Just meet, just put yourself on their radar. It can be useful sometime. That's how I got this health project that I described. I went out, I met them like in the summer of 2020, and I did a project with them in the fall of 21 because they remembered me, and when they had a project they reached out to me. And so I think that's really, and the other thing is, what's the worst that can happen? They say no, but that's not going to change my life, right? If they say yes, it can be better, but if they say no, it's not going to be worse. So I think those are the two things that I follow. And and everything's not going to be the best all the time, but we can always try to do better with whatever we have at hand.
Very beautiful. In the world of degrees and schools, I believe LinkedIn is a very good alternative to make connections, reach out. If a lot of people could not go to, let's say, Harvard Business School or MITs of the world. In fact, I today just wrote an interesting write-up, how to get a job with zero work experience. And a lot of what you just said is resonating in that as well, which is just to reach out. The answer is already no without reaching out. So here's to embracing no's as a life mantra to get that one yes. And with that, Smriti, we are going to be wrapping up this Shatakshi show. It was an honor to have you once again. Congratulations on being a GGI 30 under 30. I wish you all the best, and I'm very sure that you have many, many more milestones to achieve.
Thank you so much.